Hello,
For sure.
everyone.
Hi,
Eric here
everybody.
from the Summons from Gallifrey podcast. This is a podcast that focuses on classic Doctor Who so far, quote unquote. And this is a special episode. I've got the end. I've just wrapped up the first season of this podcast, and this is a recap show where I thought it would be fun to kind of go through all of the episodes that we covered during the season and put them on a tier list that you see on the right. And joining me today is my special guest host, Mr. Collin Legault.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Colin, how are you doing today?
Peachy, how about yourself?
Peachy. Well, that's a good one. I'm doing
Yeah.
ducky. I'll say ducky.
Ducky, great. Your chair looks awfully familiar.
Yeah. What? Where's my Kevin surprise face?
Yeah.
Although now they've made a new version, so I don't know if we can even say the old version anymore. Anyways, yeah, no, I thought it would be really fun. You and I have talked in the past about doing our own show, and you've got your own kind of interest in stuff with like home automation and all that kind of cool stuff. And you're also a where we intersect here, of course, is our Doctor Who, our love for Doctor Who. Now,
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong. Have you seen any of these classic episodes before?
Before now, so I've watched all of them, yes, but before that, some of them I had seen, but not all of them.
Okay, okay. So kind of like me. Like I know about all of these ones that I covered this season, but there's a few of them that I never actually watched until this podcast.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so you're on the same boat. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were only following the new series or
Oh
if
no,
you
I remember getting up early in the morning and like they were on some crazy schedule on the local PBSs that I where I lived,
totally.
and so you never knew what you were going to get, and so I just took what I could when I could. So
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, no, that it's funny you say that because ours was late Saturday nights. It was like midnight until like 2 in the morning was
yeah.
when they played Doctor Who here. So on PBS. So I'm not. Do you? I have no memory. I can't even recall it. I've tried so many times. But do you ever remember the very first Doctor Who episode you've seen? Story episode?
I don't
Even the
remember which episode. I know which doctor.
okay, which Doctor?
It was the fourth doctor.
Okay, okay. I think mine was it's going to be either the fourth or the fifth.
Yeah.
But I can't even really like say that with 100% certainty. So I don't
I
know
actually
why.
attribute a lot of my personality to watching Doctor Who.
Okay, okay. I could see that. I could
Yeah.
see that. Um, okay, cool. So let's see. I'm just going through my show notes, and so I think what we'll do is we've each now that we've each watched these stories. Well, I did for this episode, and you did for well also
For
this
this
episode.
episode.
Yeah, sorry. And I think that maybe we'll just I don't know what order to do these in. I kind of randomized a little bit randomized the order that you see on the screen.
Yeah.
We don't have to go in the order here. So maybe if you're not used to if you're not familiar with tier rankings, the S tier is usually the top. This is like the supreme level of episode of story. Sorry, I've got to stop saying episode instead of story. So this is like the supreme story level, and C is kind of let's just say not the greatest, the worst. I don't want to say the worst, but we'll say not the greatest. And then we've got the middle of the pack, the A and B,
Which don't count.
which
Nah, there's actually one episode in particular that I really wish we couldn't count.
yeah. Oh, I know. I think I know what one you're talking about, but
Yeah.
I guess we'll get there.
Yep.
Okay, so I don't have. Oh, I didn't have my. I have my dragon dice, but I didn't have an easy way of showing them on screen. So I don't know if you want to take away the honors and pick the first story that we'll talk about.
Let's take that one.
Okay, you're pointing at Trial of a Time Lord.
How did you know?
Magic of the internet.
That's right.
Okay, so this is Colin Baker's regeneration story. This was the Ultimate Foe. If you recall, this is when they tried to do a whole season, all 14 episodes, based around the theme of a trial of a Time Lord. And I think in my podcast episode, I mentioned that it was they originally pitched this as a now I'm forgetting the thing, the Scrooge story, the Christmas Scrooge story.
Christmas. Oh, you're talking about the Once Upon a Christmas
No,
Halloween or something?
no, not Halloween. The one with Scrooge. The where he gets visited by the three ghosts. And so that
Ebenezer Scrooge. Yeah.
yeah.
Christmas Carol.
Yes, thank you so much. Oh my gosh. So
I was waiting for you to stick your tongue out so I could read it off the tip of your tongue.
So that's kind of where the creation of that came from, which is a really cool idea, and I think they really tried to nail it, but it kind of fell apart for various reasons that I think I covered throughout the story. But I'm curious, what do you feel about it?
Yeah. Did you watch the whole 14 part or just the end of it?
See, now I kind of debated on that, and we'll get to Survivor. When we get to Survival, I kind of have the same thing. So when they moved to this 14 episodes, they did try to do this as kind of a whole story, but
Yeah.
at the same time, they didn't plan it that way. Like they had it in their heads that way. Eric Sayward seemed to have that in his head that way, and same with John Nathan Turner. But when they threw it to the writers, they kind of just went off in different directions with it. And
Kind of like the new Star Wars trilogy.
kind of, yeah. It's like, what is tying this together? Like there's barely anything that's holding it together. And then, of course, the guy that you have writing the first and the last episodes suddenly dies
Yep.
when nobody really knows what his notes were, right? I mean, they're so. Anyways, but okay. Long story short, I really went off on a tangent there. Yes, I watched all 14 way before, but for this podcast, I only watched the last one.
Okay.
The one that I covered in the story. How about you? Did you go through the whole season or just this last?
I didn't have time to go through the whole season. I want to go back and do it now, but yeah. I mean, so Colin Baker, just because we share the same name, I really wanted to like him.
Totally.
And it was just barely below a high school production level.
Yeah.
That was the problem for me with it. So
he started off so well, and he really had good intentions. And like when he first talked to John Nathan Turner when they first signed him, he was like broadcasting to everyone in every interview that he was going to have a longer run than Tom Baker.
Yep.
And that was his story, that he was going to be like a real. Okay, we won't go too much more into that because there's one other story that we have of him, the first story, which might tie into this. Okay, so enough babbling. Where do you think you put it on the list?
Having not seen the whole thing of the trial of the Time Lord, and just judging it off of what I saw in the last arc of it, I have to put it at C.
C?
Yeah.
I agree with you. Yoink.
Yep.
I'm totally with you. Now, just to save both of us, we can, of course, readjust these later on once we start filling this A and B. That's where the hardest decisions are coming, when we fill these A and B ones. Okay.
It's interesting that you said that about him broadcasting about how he was going to have a longer run, because that's exactly, for me, the downfall of Matt Smith recently. Matt Smith had never seen any of the Doctor Who series ever. So he went out and said, I'm going to be the best doctor there ever was.
Right.
But he was not a fan, had never watched it, had no idea what he was getting into. And that just left a bad taste in my mouth for him.
Oh, wow. There you have it. Okay. I personally, like Matt Smith is one of my favorite doctors, but that's awesome. I do remember that interview. Now that you bring that up, I do remember him saying that. And that came out. Didn't that come out just before his opening story?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was like, oh boy, what are we getting into?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, with that said, I also sorry, another tangent, but when he stepped through the basically facade of all the other doctors' faces, that alien, I don't remember who it was the big eyeball.
Yep.
When he stepped through that, as the Doctor said, I'm the Doctor, that was probably the coolest entrance of any introduction of a Doctor.
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. No, that was amazing. That gave me chills. That one scene gave me chills. They did an amazing job of putting that together. Okay, I think I'll go next,
Okay.
and I'll pick Tom Baker's first story, Robot.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I hear that. Okay, so
uh,
I guess I really like Tom Baker. I think he really brought a lot to the role of the Doctor. Of course, I mean, I think he's one of, if you ask any kind of fan, and even people who haven't seen the show, they are more aware. They probably are more aware of Tom Baker, just
yep.
because of the scarf, the iconic scarf, the curly hair, right? So
Floppy curly hair.
floppy curly hair. Like that whole story was really great up until they showed the robot, I thought, and then it kind of just all went downhill from there. And then it became just a King Kong.
Right? That's exactly the impression that I got from it when he picked her up, and I forget what her name was, Zoe.
Sarah Jane.
Sarah Jane. That's right, Sarah Jane.
Yeah.
So when he picked her up and set her up, I'm like, isn't that just completely stealing King Kong at that point?
But I will say that out of the opening stories of these seven Doctors that we're going through, I did like it that they weren't like, I felt, of course, as we talk about this, we can't help but bring in some of the other stories, but I felt like with John Pertwee's first story, like the whole first episode, it felt like he's in the hospital, like just in a bed, not doing much, right? And
Right.
in this one, he's unconscious for a little bit, but then they kind of kick it in right away where he just picks up and he's the Doctor. Like he doesn't seem to go through much regeneration, trauma, sickness, whatever, amnesia, whatever they describe it as, which I think
Right.
is a good point for the story. They just kind of get right into, we know Unit, we know the Brigadier, and that's kind of what pulls us into the story. They use that to pull us into the story right away. And we don't spend too much time on dealing with the Doctor. He's changed again.
Yeah.
Which I think was a brilliant move. They everyone there has seen him regenerate, so they don't have to waste time with who is he? What is he doing here? Where's the old Doctor? Let's arrest this man. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
And those people, since he had known them, and they had known him for multiple faces,
yeah,
it made the
yeah,
big difference. Yeah.
genius.
I agree.
Okay.
But he did rest. If you recall, he did lay down a lot and take rests, like on tabletops.
Oh,
Like he would just lay down.
that's true. Okay.
I'm taking a nap. So he did it to a small extent. Just I felt like it was like kind of homage to doing that in the past. But he and earlier on, they were talking as they were going through regenerations about how it would get better with time. And so I felt like maybe that was
okay.
a thing that he just wasn't used to because it was early on regenerations. And then maybe now he was getting more used to the regenerations and that they weren't going to have the same huge effect on the system.
Okay. Hey, I like that. I didn't interpret it that way when they were talking about that, but that's a good way to put it. And as a viewer, we're kind of used to this now.
Yeah.
And we don't know, oh, here we go again. Another episode and a half of, who's that strange person, Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so where would you put Robot?
Okay. So one other thing. Do you remember the name of the robot? K1.
Ah, that's right.
And so then I was when he said that, I'm like, K9.
Yeah.
Was he the ninth? And then I was wondering if there was some connection later.
Hey, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh,
But I felt the same way going through, like once that robot hit, it was like, that looks like something out of a bad school play also. But
yeah.
But it was interesting that it was built on principles of a human, because that's exactly, when we look at artificial intelligence, there's
Right.
a lot of movies and TV lore nowadays around, well, we need to get a spark of a person in there before we can get to
right.
true artificial intelligence. So it was interesting that this went back that far, doing the same thing.
Oh, totally. And I loved how, like, this first world order type of organization, I think they have maybe a total of 5 members, right? Like there's that scene
Right.
where they're all gathered together in the main hall, and I mean, it's Doctor Who. You have to kind of fill in with your imagination that you can imagine. In when they're writing the script, they're envisioning like a giant concert hall with like thousands of people, right? And they're
Right.
all cheering. They're all cheering the leader on. And but all they could afford was like the 5 extras that were in the canteen
Right.
kind of thing. So hey, we need you. Come in here for this show. So
So
okay.
with my ranking, I put it kind of low. I think I put it lower than you. I put it as a B, I think.
Okay. Let's start with a B. I could go with that. I'm either A or B on that for what we
Yeah.
just talked about. So, okay, cool. Your turn.
All
Oh,
right.
unless you have something else to say about
Well, I
robots.
was just gonna say, I also thought it was very interesting because I never like the twist plot of the creator of the robot actually being a part of. Never ever occurred to me. They did a really good job.
They did. Kettleman. Yeah,
Yep.
they did.
Yep.
They did you're right. They did do a good job of that.
Um, how about we start at the beginning with this one? We'll go back to the Earthly Child.
Okay. Cool. An unearthly child. Yeah. The
Unearthly Child. Right. Right.
yeah. The one that started it all. Um And I think we maybe there's a curve that people put it on because of that, because it's the first one,
Yep.
and they had no idea how to run the show, how to produce the show,
Where it was
the
going.
where it was going, right? Like the that TARDIS, that first scene where they dematerialize and they head to the BC era. It just seemed to take forever for that one sequence, but I
Yep.
mean, that's looking at it from like a more modern viewer, right? And
Right.
and back at the time, it was probably like, whoa, like mind blowing. So
So I have some friends that have another podcast that talk about movies and the pace of shows and movies as the time has gone on. In the old days, you would have a scene where the person is at one location, then you see them in the car, then you see them arrive at the location. Because if you went from the first location to the next location, the viewer would wonder, how did they get there?
yeah,
And so, in order to alleviate that, they would do the scene in the middle with the car, which is exactly
okay,
what they did on the show.
yeah, okay. That's a good way to put it. And yeah, you're right. I mean, like if you watch like Gone with the Wind and like, I mean, I'm picking a random movie out of a hat, but like that's considered a classic still.
Yep.
And they definitely did that. They had a lot of transition type scenes
Yep.
to go between the main locations. Okay. Um,
So you could tell the pacing was very much slower. Of course, he was much older doctor also,
right.
and as far as we know, never had regenerated before. So
Yep.
elderly, and we have seen the master elderly, and he also was a very slow moving individual at that point. So I kind of felt like that was all in pace, but I don't know. I felt like throughout the whole storyline, he was very aloof and really not wanting anything to do with the human race and
Oh yeah.
people in general. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally got that same impression. Like he was a very different doctor than what he ended up in the 10th planet. Like
Yep.
he was very, you're right. Like just, what do you I don't care at all about you guys, like
Yeah.
that's, my name, what was that expression? My name's Paul and this is this
Yeah.
is to do with y'all, right? Like
Yep.
he's really trying to separate himself. And what did you think of Ian and Barbara?
So one of the things that was very interesting to me on that entire story arc about those two in particular is they would step aside and have conversations as adults as if the child couldn't hear them
Yeah.
right next to them. So it was like what was going on in their head leaking out as side conversations like
Yeah.
you would kind of do in a play.
Yep.
So I thought that was interesting. Their dynamic together, it was hard to tell if they were romantic or not from the school setting standpoint. But I felt like I kind of felt like they held their own throughout, just on not completely freaking out
Yeah.
on everything. Like they didn't go running out of the TARDIS and start walking around it like they do now.
Right.
Then go back in. Um, so it was. I don't know. I felt like they would have had bigger reactions in some cases and smaller reactions in others than they did.
Agreed. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
so would you say that they tried to spend an appropriate time on the sections they were trying to highlight as this new show,
Yeah, I think so.
like
I
this new
think so.
concept? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think they spent too much time on pretty much everything that they
Well, the funny one. I mean, it's because it's kind of, as you say, like they when they were talking, it's meant to be like as an aside, which you kind of do
Right.
in plays, right? And the other funny bit was at the beginning when they're parking, they follow Susan home, and they're
Right.
basically parked, like their car is like right in front of where Susan is, and
She
Susan,
didn't see them,
yeah, Susan has to be
although
complete.
she's looking around.
I know. She has to be completely oblivious, right? And meanwhile, right behind her, Ian's got the headlights on, and him and Barbara are like, "Oh, where is she going? What is she doing?" And
Yep.
why don't you guys
Why?
talk louder?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And then they get in there, and the doctor's just wandering around in the junkyard, like,
Yeah, yeah, I know.
"There's no child here. You need to leave."
Yeah. Only a madman would live in a junkyard. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Oh boy. Um. Okay.
There
And
was one other thing about that I
yep.
thought about with the and I think I've talked to you this off podcast about how the granddaughter has never been like kind of revisited ever.
Yeah.
She gets dropped off in a later episode and marries somebody, or like she ends up being romantically inclined with somebody, and that's the end of it.
Yep.
She's just gone at that point
It's
and
kind of
never
a
mentioned again. Yep.
Yep. They do bring her back for the Five Doctors special, but again, it's very hi grandfather, hi Susan, and that's it. Like that's all we get.
I haven't seen that one.
That is, I would recommend that over rewatching Trial of a Time Lord. I would
Yeah.
definitely. It's a wicked episode. Um, cool. Okay.
Yep.
And so what did you think about the overall story with the cavemen?
Well, so that was what made it interesting, I think, is because we've now firmly established that he can go anywhere in time. And what was never brought out was this Earth?
Yes. Yes. Good point. They don't outright say it. Are we on Earth or are we on some
Yeah.
totally different planet that has Earth-like
Yeah.
environment? So, which I think is really cool. I mean, especially since the next story they
Yeah.
make a point in the next story of right away being on an alien planet. So
Right.
so we're kind of I feel that we're kind of left to determine that.
Assume. Yeah.
Yeah, assume that we are on Earth, but you're right. They don't explicitly say it. I think if unless I'm mistaken, which I probably am, even Susan, when they land, Susan goes over the controls saying it has like Earth-like conditions. But
Right.
I could be wrong. So the fight was good. I like the fist fight. That was really well choreographed
Yep.
for that time.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it. Yeah, but I thought it was really good.
And you were talking about that one guy looking like Will Ferrell.
Yeah, man, I could not
That
believe
was
it.
exactly when I watched it. I was like, because he moved like him. Not only did he look like him, he moved like him.
I know.
I was just waiting for him to get out the cowbell.
I know. I swear there's a Saturday Night Live sketch where he is dressed as a caveman.
I'm sure.
I'm not going to look it up right now, but I swear there is, and that's what I was picturing. And
Yep.
he turns out to be the father of what's her face.
Yeah.
So I laughed. Oh, her. That's
Her.
what her name. Her.
Oh
Which
yeah,
is-
her. I remember.
Yeah.
The princess.
The princess. Her. Who? Her? No, her.
Yeah.
Okay. Awful name. Anyways. Okay, so I will go first this time.
All right.
And I think I will put it. I am going to put it on a curve because it is the first one, and they weren't exactly sure what they were doing. And I felt the chemistry between all the actors was really good. It was surprisingly good for
Yeah.
not really knowing what this show was going to be. I don't think any of them kind of, except for maybe William Hartnell, but I don't think they really had an idea of what the total concept was sort of supposed to be like. At least that's my impression. So I will put it on the A group.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Cool. Okay, 3 down. Uh, a few more to go. 11, 2, 4, 6. Yeah, about 11. Whatever. Okay. You're next. Oh, wait. Did you
Oh, I
pick?
just went.
Okay. So I am going to pick. I might as well go ahead and pick Survival. McCoy's last story before we go into a 26 or 19-year hiatus of the show.
Right.
So before I talk about it, what did you think about?
Actually, go ahead and talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was going to say is my only not grief. Grief is a bad phrase to put it, but in the new Doctor Who, when they relaunched Doctor Who, they went towards a series format which was still about 12, 14 episodes. I can't remember how many episodes there were in the new series, but they went to a concept where each episode was a different thing,
Yep.
but all tied together with a really deeper developed common thread between them. And they've kind of kept that format all the way till today. Each episode is a totally different story, but yet they have elements that are kind of tied together throughout the season. And I feel like Survival, they almost had it. It was like the first one where Andrew Cartmill was the script editor at the time, and for the first time in the show's history, 26-year history, he had everyone, all the story writers for that whole season, they were all working from day one together to develop the stories for the season. And besides Battlefield, let's not even talk about Battlefield, but like Curse of Fenric, Ghostlight, and then Survival, these stories really had a great progression and development, I thought, of the Ace character, and really tried to build her up, as well as really showcasing Sylvester McCoy's Doctor as kind of being a puppeteer pulling strings from above, and I think it did a really good job of that throughout that whole season. Now, I wasn't too crazy when I did have to look at Survival all by itself, because that's what I did with Colin Baker's story. So I had to kind of keep that out of my head when I was doing this episode or story. But I felt like Survival was kind of the weaker one out of the Curse of Fenric, Ghostlight. I'm in my head, that's a trilogy for me, for Ace's character, and Survival was kind of the weakest one out of the three, and it just happened to be the last story that we got for the next 19 years. So, but
and that part disappointed me when I got done watching it. I was like, this was the last episode?
Yeah. Like you could see it. You could see kind of the seeds of what the show would kind of become when they relaunched it, right? And you could kind of see that, and you could imagine that if they had a series 27, a season 27, you could imagine that they would go even further into this concept of, working together and coming up with a whole season format. And it's just too bad. On that note of Ace, the Sophia Aldred will be showing up in the 13th Doctor's last story, along with Tegan, the actress who plays Tegan Jovanka. Yeah, it's the 13th Doctor. I don't want to get into the 13th Doctor, but the fact that they're managing somehow to bring in Tegan and Ace, I think that by far, for most fans, I think that's going to be the hook to get them to watch it. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what they do with them. But at any rate, back to Survival. Now that I've kind of blabbed about it for a while, what did you think?
So I thought it was interesting. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Running Man. Interesting.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why. I don't have any direct things, but when I first saw it, they would like arrive and start, running, which isn't exactly what the Running Man was, but they were being chased down. So it kind of felt like that.
I could see where you're going with that. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
Yep.
Especially with what's her face on the horse, Kara on the horse chasing down, and then that poor milkman. Man, that guy. Just
all he was trying to do is bring those cats some food.
I know. He's just, wait, I got milk.
But yeah, I mean, I thought it was actually pretty well done overall. Just for the one story arc. I didn't, I saw Karate Kid in the very beginning of it, and I was waiting for him to say, no, strike first, strike hard, no mercy, sir. I was waiting for someone to say that, but
That's right. Wax on,
that's what it
wax
kind of
off.
felt like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it took me a minute to realize that he was the guy that come running up on the doctor who was in the people's bushes watching cats. So, and
Yeah,
I also thought it was really interesting that the cats poster was on the wall in there too, and that he was like,
yeah, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. I mean,
yeah.
It was a little bit weird why he would single that out before even understanding what's going on. But at the same time, I mean, it's kind of where they're trying to take the Doctor, right? And being this master sort of order. I couldn't help but really laugh out loud at whenever they had like a real cat who died. They tried to show the body, and it was just a horribly awful stuffed prop. That I mean, it just looked terrible. But whatever. What do you do, right?
Yeah.
But
the costumes were really good. The ones that look like cats. Yeah.
They were really great. Yeah. No, they were really great. Really well done. Really well done.
And the effect with the eyes was really cool too for that, especially for that time period. So.
Yep. Oh, totally. Yeah. When Ace was looking back at the camera, and yeah.
And when the Master was looking back at the camera.
Oh, right. Yeah. How could I forget? That was his major. So speaking of the Master, given how popular the Master is as a character overall in the classic series since they introduced him, he's actually not in I guess he's in a couple of these. They bring him back in a couple of these finale regeneration type stories. What did you think of this version, like this final version of the Master that we see here?
Well, it made me curious why always wonder how he survives anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they thought he was gone once you get, into the new series.
Yep.
So, it was interesting on that front.
Well, and
I also thought it was interesting that they had the same guy as the Master, like throughout multiple Doctors.
Yeah, that's right, Anthony Ainley. Yeah, no, and I think that's. It was both a good idea and a bad idea. I think it was a good idea here because I think here he's finally a good version of the Master. Like in some of the other stories, he's ridiculous. Like he gets so over the top when he's trying to be drama-y. But I think here he's kind of got a good balance of he's losing his sanity, he's losing control of his will, and all he wants to do is destroy the Doctor, like usual.
That's all that's left.
Yeah, that's all that's left. Yeah, basically speaking. Okay. What else to say?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't have much else to say about that. No, it was a good. I think it was a good kind of concept, but so they did interview the author, and she was kind of now Rose Monroe, was that her name? Alice Monroe? No, not Alice Monroe. She's a different author, but this was I think Rose something Monroe, but she was basically I think I remember reading that she was really trying to develop a lesbian connection between Ace and Kara, which you kind of get, but at the same time, they kind of don't. They don't really, and it shouldn't be made sort of a big production thing of. But I think they kind of, if that was the intention, I think they kind of did a good job of showing that, where you kind of get that there's a little bit of a connection between them. But it doesn't become too ridiculous either, right? So, okay.
And you have to wonder at the end of it, did Ace continue to have that the cat power or whatever it was after she came back?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And and I don't think they'll even touch on that in the new series
Yeah.
when they bring her back.
Yeah.
Although
How about,
I mean,
please don't.
I would be totally floored if someone actually mentions it, like if she actually says, "I was trapped on whatever." But no,
Yeah.
I can't see them ever mentioning the cat people. And back to your point about the master, saying how you couldn't, it's hard to see how he keeps surviving. It's kind of funny in this one that even the doctor at the end, like Ace asks him, well, so the master's dead, and he just kind of says, well, we'll see.
We'll see. Yep. Yep.
I don't want to say because I jinx it every time.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Okay,
All right.
so where would you put it?
I think I put this in A.
A. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
So
a
where
good
you had
choice.
it?
I was torn between A and B. So
Yeah.
as we score the rest of these, maybe we'll update it. But yeah, I think A is a good one. Yeah. Okay, your turn. What's next?
War games.
Oh, War Games. Okay. So this is one of the ones that I've never seen before I did this podcast, but I always knew what the outcome of the story was based on John Pertwee's Third Doctor. But I never actually sat down to watch this. So I felt just the experience of watching that one, and same. I want to go back and say the same thing about An Unearthly Child. I've never seen that before. Before I did this podcast. So with War Games, yeah, same thing. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was a really well executed. There were so many places where it could have just gone off the rails. 10 episodes or 12. Is it 12? 12 episodes. And I mean, there's so much opportunity for that to just go out sideways, right? And
Yeah.
maybe in some of the middle sections it kind of lost its way a little bit. Maybe there's a little bit of running around, kind of doing what they do, where they run around between everything. But I thought the concept was brilliant. I thought just the whole idea of it was so cool, and the fact that it kind of kicks off the whole concept of what the Time Lords are, which they build on for like the next 20 years, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, which I thought was just amazing in and of itself, right? I mean, like, it's only 15 or 20 minutes at the end when they finally meet the Time Lords. I guess the whole last episode is just about the Time Lords, and that's all you get. And they build 20 years off of that, which I thought was just incredible. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. It was very, very well executed. There's a lot of interesting things like the Spock like part where he's like staring, at them, puts on the glasses, and we went to school together.
That's right. That was
and then he like takes him off and he snapped. So everything's fine. Why?
That's right. We went to school together. That's right. How could I forget?
Yep. Didn't have any idea what was going on in the very beginning of it, so I thought they did a really good job because he would walk in, open up the painting, and then he'd stand sideways on the camera, and like he's looking at nothing, but and then like, oh, it's like a television with a video camera or with a video system. I'm like, well, why is he looking off to the side then?
That's right.
It's because of the better camera angle. But I also loved that part where they were when they go back and they find it to prove that it's there, and nobody can see it except for the people who haven't been. It's like in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There's this someone else's problem.
The SCP
force field. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I thought that was really cool.
What did you think about Jamie and Zoe?
Oh, I liked them a lot.
Yep. Really strong characters.
Really strong characters, both of them.
Yeah. They were
Jamie coming out of like, the old days and like, oh, new technology? That's no big deal. Like still running around in a kilt.
That's right. That's right.
So
Still
yeah,
wanting to beat up everyone. But
yeah,
yeah. No, I felt that Zoe, I don't want to say well, it is, I guess it is a complaint or gripe. My only complaint about Zoe is that it is kind of hard to understand what her motivation is. Like, she's a super smart 22nd century-ish character, but I don't know much more about her than that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I felt that this was kind of, I was surprised that the Time Lords, I mean, it is a children's show, but I was surprised that the Time Lords at the end just restored them back to where they were. They did erase their memories, which I thought was really harsh.
Yeah.
I thought that was too bad. Imagine all these adventures with the Doctor and then just having them all
Gone. Yep.
erased. Yeah, which I thought I thought that was worse. I mean, I would almost, de-res me over losing all my memory. So, yeah, and I mean, I loved, like you say, like you brought up, I really love that aspect too. That kind of mesmerizing ability that these war chief people had.
It was also interesting that the longer you stay away from them, and if people start reminding you of things, that you can get back to your previous memories. So that whole group that was kind of creating their own coalition between all the different time zones, trying to get to whoever was doing this to them. And I wonder, like, they always used the monocle or the spectacles to do one person, but how did they do like large groups too? I don't know.
Great point. Yeah, great point. I mean, they had that, remember when the Doctor like fixed up that machine that would help them do a lot of people, but what did they do before that? I mean, you're right. Like, what did they kind of, especially like to the Romans?
Yep.
You bring in all these Roman soldiers, and
that was a great scene.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was fantastic. Okay, so another question: what did you think about the plot itself? So the one thing I didn't, the only thing that fell apart for me about this whole concept of the war games was the fact that they would eventually take these soldiers and use them to invade the rest of the universe.
Right.
And I thought,
what?
How is that going to work? I mean,
so you've got these Roman soldiers with their horseback and swords, and you're going to take them and take over the universe.
I mean, yeah. I mean, throw them against the Daleks or the Cybermen, right? I mean, like, what do you think is going to happen? So to me, that's the only minor detail that I couldn't see where this plan was going to be successful. But the plan itself, the whole idea of this was really cool.
Yeah, and I actually wondered if they weren't just trying to play out different strategies, like let's have this group go here and do this, and this group, okay, did that work? No, let's try another one.
Okay. So they're like, they've got a giant list of battle strategies, and they're just knocking them down to okay. To me that would make much more sense.
Yeah.
If they kind of came up with that as a way to explain the whole thing, that would make sense. Yeah, and I don't know if you it just another one of those weird brain things that happens, kind of like what you were mentioning earlier about Will Ferrell. The war chief. There's a character in Seinfeld where they meet the head of NBC, and I think his name is Russell. I'm really trying to recall what his name was. I think his name is Russell, but I swear he looks identical to the war chief. I'll have to Google it later, but I swear, it's Russell. No, it's the war chief. Okay. But anyways,
and at first I wondered if it was the Master.
Totally.
Yep.
And that would have almost been like a really cool reveal to find out, and then to find out that who was the Time Lord? Was that the war chief?
Yeah.
Okay, the Warlord. Sorry, the Warlord is the one that looks like the character I was thinking of.
Okay, yeah.
The short guy with glasses and the hair, right? But the War Chief, yeah. But imagine if like the Warlord was like the Master.
Yep.
And then the War Chief is like, what?
Yeah. Well, no, that was another thing. As soon as they saw each other, they recognized each other as Time Lords, which is really interesting because when he, in the previous episode, when he first regenerated, he ran into what's her name? Zar. What's the lady Time Lord that was in his?
Romana?
Not his. Was it his? No, no, no. It was
Lady Time
oh,
Lord.
was it? No. What's the second one there?
Patrick
The
Troughton?
the second
Oh,
episode there.
Time in the Rani?
Ronnie.
Oh, okay, okay.
Because he didn't look at her and recognize her as a
Oh,
Time Lord.
right,
But here are
right.
these two Time Lords, and he regenerated, so they don't know what he looks like now. See each other and recognize each other immediately as a Time Lord.
That's right. That's right. Oh, that's a good one. Okay. I didn't even make that connection. That's a good one. Oh, man. Nice. Okay. Yeah. No, no. I agree. I agree.
Yep, yep.
Um, okay. So you go first. Where would you.
So this is one of the best ones. Like I agree with you completely. So I had, based off of this previous ranking, I would put that in S.
I'm with you. Patrick Troughton's final hurrah was like one of the best.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Whose turn?
I think it's yours.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it is yours.
Okay. I will say. Okay. How about John Pertwee's regeneration story, "The Planet of the Spiders"?
Oh. So as soon as I started seeing this, I had flashbacks to current time Doctor Who with the spider. I forget who they were. They had some giant spaceship or something in the middle of the Earth, and were trying to have it come out, and it was going to break up the Earth, and she was going to resurrect all of the spiders. Do you remember that episode?
I don't.
So I think it was with the 10th Doctor.
Sorry to leave you hanging, but yeah, no,
Yeah.
I don't.
So I had immediate flashbacks to
Is that
this
a
because it
tenant?
was,
A tenant
yeah,
story?
yep,
Okay.
yep.
I'm
And
gonna have
she
to
was
watch
like
it. I'll find it.
underground or something, and
I'll watch it and find it. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Um.
I don't remember what it's
Okay.
called, but I had immediate flashbacks because it was almost like the same race. But then as you get further along and you find out that no, these were actually spiders that came from Earth at some point, and they were colonies. Like that means that they came from Earth at some point, the humans, sometime at some point in the future, but then had been, driven into this not poverty, but like lack of technology somehow.
Right. Right.
It was interesting and almost got back into Lord of the Flies or whatever, kind of living.
Right. And who catches flies? All the spiders.
All the spiders. Yep.
Yeah. No, I like that. No, that's really good. Yeah, and it was kind of a really neat idea. It almost reminded me of little things that kind of make a big impact later on. So I would say, like, in some ways, uh, Douglas Adams,
Yeah.
some of his story concepts are kind of like that, where there's like a little thing, like, a character crosses the road and picks up this shovel, and I don't know, I'm going off the rails, but like in the future, like it builds on that until, like, 20 years in the future, it became this huge thing because of this one little act done 20 years previously or whatever, right?
Right. Right.
That kind of happens throughout Hitchhikers, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So here, kind of the same way, like the spaceship crashes on the planet, the spiders, were like normal spiders were sort of on board, and they leave the ship and they find these crystals, which
Yep.
transform them into these supremely evil creatures, right? But like it, just sort of like an ordinary, normal, like, oh, like just normal spider. It's kind of like in some ways, maybe like the fly, where
Right. Right.
the fly sneaks into the pod, and just a stupid ordinary fly, and then his life is ruined forever because it's now taken over his whole body. But no, I thought it was like when we finally see the queen spider, it was really well done. Like
Yep.
she looked really, she looked like Shelob from Lord of the Rings, right? Like just massive,
Right.
and just this icky, gross, like frightening, like spider, right? And
Right.
the ones in the council room, not so much. They look like
Yeah.
Halloween store
Yeah.
props, and you could see the wires that they were jiggling around, and
Yeah.
um, but and the other cool effect, the other one I definitely wanted to mention was the ones that they showed leaping onto the humans' backs
And then disappearing.
and
Yeah.
then disappearing. That was really well done. Like it was like
Yeah.
you can really see that. You can feel that almost.
Yeah. So I will have to say, I didn't understand the connection back to that whole group, that whole sect. How, like, so their leader is a Time Lord, and once again, he doesn't recognize him as a Time Lord. They don't recognize each other.
Oh,
Then
you're talking about the doctor and
his mentor,
Kanpo? Yeah.
yeah. So they don't recognize each other because they're both their faces have changed, but they don't recognize each other as Time Lords. Second part of that is, why was he trying to help this sect do things where they would call into where the spiders were? And how did the spiders know where the blue crystal had gone? Like, there's all these kinds of questions that
Yeah.
never got resolved in it.
Yeah, they kind of did conveniently leave out some of these points.
Yep.
You're right. I think it's they. Yeah, I did like the characters were sort of strong. They each had their own, properly developed motivations. I thought.
And we had
Um,
our lawnmower man moment.
that's right.
Except he didn't turn evil, but
Right, right. And I like that. I like the idea of them using this like meditation to pull in um, sup- like different forces. Like when
right.
I'm trying to think of like when they tried to steer Mike Yates off the road when he was driving with Sarah Jane, and they kind of chant and it builds up, and then they all of a sudden a ghost appears or whatever in front of him, and he zooms off into the side there.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, you're right. It's kind of like Kanpo was like oblivious to what was going on, but it
Yep. Yep.
but at the same time, the way he talked at the end is that he knew this was all going to happen.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep. Yep.
I mean,
So you just said Sarah Jane, and it reminded me of something from the robot episode. So I'm going to step back just for a moment because
sure.
I just remembered this. I felt like she was very strong always in every episode, and one of the
Amazing.
things that stood out in the robots episode was when she went to the other facility, which I forget the name of it, but where the robot was, and she assumed that the guy was the director of the place when it was really the woman, and she like called her out on it.
That was
I wouldn't
great.
expect you, of all people, Sarah Jane, to
Yep.
automatically have this misogyny. So, yeah. Anyway,
Oh no, I no, you're right. That's a great call out. I
yep,
thought that was really great too. Totally. Yeah. No, Sarah Jane herself, like, and I mean, it's no wonder why she's one of the fan favorite
yep,
companions
of
of the
all
doc
time. Yep,
of all time, because when she met David Tennant
yeah, that was
in the
fantastic.
new series, I mean, like, it almost brought tears to my eyes. Like it was
Yeah,
it was so well done, and they just, she recognizes him like very quickly that
yep,
he's the doctor, right? And anyways, if you haven't seen that, just Google that on YouTube, and
yeah, I've seen it.
it's definitely
Yeah,
worth a
definitely.
watch. But yeah, no, throughout Tom Baker's, and she didn't. I felt like she definitely got her footing with Tom Baker
Definitely.
versus John Pertwee.
Yep.
I think when she was introduced with for John Pertwee right near the, I think it was just in the story just before
Yeah.
Planet of the Spiders. She was always a strong journalist and really independent, but she didn't seem to gel too quickly, or she didn't seem to gel the right way with Pertwee that she did with Tom Baker.
Yep.
So yeah.
All right. So where do we put this one?
I guess I would start it at the B tier. I think it was a really neat idea, and they executed it fairly well. I think it was still a little bit confusing how Kanpo was the future version of the um, the Abbot.
Yep.
I think they could have uh, maybe done that a little bit differently. I think they were just trying to bring in elements of um, what am I looking for? Elements of Buddhism.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
so that was interesting that you said that, because the only other time that I remember them doing anything like that was in Tom Baker's last story.
Logopolis. Yep,
Yep.
where
Yep.
they bring in the Watcher, and
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of same idea, and maybe
Yep.
that's exactly why they did it. Maybe to try and bring a callback um, to what happened in Planet of the Spiders. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I would still put it as a B. I think they had some of the really great elements, but there was still a few things which were a little bit weird and didn't kind of work out too well when you watch the story back.
Yep.
But how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think that B is a good place for it.
Okay. Yoink. Okay. We're getting close. That's all
Yeah, we're
right.
almost halfway.
That's that's right. Okay, next
All right,
pick.
let's just put the rest of them up really quick.
Yeah.
All right, it's my turn again, isn't it?
Yep.
All right. So, how about the Caves of Androzani?
Androzani.
That too.
That too.
I've heard it both ways.
Have you? I've never heard of
No,
that.
I'm American, so that's what.
That's a good way to do it.
Yep. Why isn't it Androzani?
Andros. I guess it's like Canada.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Peter Davison's final story, Firecracker, written by Robert Holmes, who did a lot of the Trial of the Time Lord, the same one who passed away
Yeah.
during Trial of the Time Lord. But Robert Holmes, who also did Spearhead from Space. So he's definitely had his hands all over Doctor Who's history, classic Who history, and he definitely knew the elements of what made Doctor Who work.
Yep.
And you could tell in the story, like it was. I imagine, I kind of want to imagine, anyways, that maybe it was a little bit of a. Maybe they were trepidatious about this story when they were planning it. Do you kind of get that? Like they didn't quite know if it was going to be good, if it was going to be bad, how it was going to turn out.
Right.
Because there's some elements of this that, on paper, maybe they don't come off too well. Like a lot of these cave scenes, like they're very cavey, and they're very dark, and but at the same time, they really managed to squeeze out a lot of tension throughout this whole story. No matter how many sequences where they're running through the same cave system scene, like set,
Yeah.
they're just running through the same one with different camera angles
Yep.
each time.
Yep.
But
That's exactly.
yeah, but they really do a good job of really drawing out that tension. Right from the get go. Like there's the Doctor and Perry. They both get this Spectrox all over them, and they don't know it yet. But right away the clock starts, their own doomsday clocks,
And they don't even know it.
and they don't even know it, right? And
Yeah.
oh well, it's just whatever. It'll go away later, and it'll take care of itself. And man, I'm really scared to die from the shooting squad and all that kind of stuff, right? But meanwhile, they've got
they're
this.
dying.
Yeah, they've got this ticking time bomb kind of going off. What else did you want to say about it?
So there was also this whole Phantom of the Opera feel to it. So you have the guy that's wearing a mask and is horribly deformed.
Sheriff's Jack.
Who-
Yep.
Yep, living in the dungeons and falls in love with this beautiful creature that he wants to have stay with him forever in the dungeons. And
Right.
then you've got the Dig Dug screen up, showing the.
That's pretty much.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, I liked it a lot. That was, it had a lot of like I said, other story elements in it like that were very strong, and I can't tell who took what from what.
Yeah.
Um,
How did you
I mean,
feel about
obviously,
Morgus?
which one was that?
Morgus, he was the chairman of the he was the one he would always turn to the camera and he would make these like what you're saying about the first Doctor about Ian and Barbara. He would be making these aside comments
Yes,
right to the
it
camera.
was his thoughts,
Yep.
right? I remember that. I remember thinking that in modern day shows that would be like a voiceover,
Yep.
that it would be his thoughts in a voiceover, but instead he's like, well, it's very soap opera like, well, if I do this, then maybe they'll start doing this. Um, so yeah, it was an interesting take on it, and I also thought that I started getting the feeling like his right hand man guy was like too on top of stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh, the general. You're talking about the general.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I did too. It kind of it had some right away you kind of was getting the feeling that something's a little bit weird here, that he seems to be more prepared and more with it than the general, who was supposed to be leading this whole expedition force to the cave system. But again, it's like most Doctor Who, what I was saying about the World Order having only 5 members. This is a general with an army of like 5 troops, right? And they would be using the same 5 troops in every shot that they had of the army, right? And
yep,
but again, I mean, it's Doctor Who. You learn to kind of fill in some of these blanks, and
yeah,
that's what makes it, I think, work. And I really the only thing I felt didn't work out at all, which I'm glad. I think the director knew it as soon as he read about it, was the cave monster. As soon as he read about the cave
yeah,
monster, I got the feeling that he's like, oh dear Lord, I'm not going to show anything about this creature. I'm going to have it on screen for 2 seconds, and
yep,
then you'll never see it again, right? And that's
yeah.
exactly in my thumbnail. I've got Ross from Friends as the armadillo, the Christmas armadillo, because that's exactly what this caveman looks there. This cave
Yeah,
monster looks like.
yep,
It was just, it really, like they didn't need it. The only reason I could see that they used the cave monster was for the second cliffhanger with the Doctor, but that's it. And oh
yeah. And then at the end, the milk of the mother of those things, the bat, right? The mother bat, and then he's crawling down into some weird, like that whole thing was like that was the only real iffy
yeah,
part, and there's no oxygen down there.
no,
So
and how
I felt like as much of a buildup as they built towards that, it almost took no time, and he did it, and there was no struggle.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. Yeah, yeah, that's exactly the same impression I got. They made this a big deal, like for like 3 episodes. They were leading up to this, that he's got to get the milk from a queen bat, and um, I, I guess these queen bats, maybe they just like deposit their milk in their nest, and all he had to do was scoop it up. Like he didn't
And there
have,
was only enough for
and
one person.
that's right. Like he didn't have to hold the bat while squeezing like whatever milk gland from her. I don't know,
Yep.
but
And it didn't appear to be a way for the bat to get out of there. There was just like stuck there.
yeah, yeah. That's right. Yeah, you're right. That part kind of didn't work so well, but it was a really good, I thought that the chase scenes through the sand dunes when Davison crashes the ship, and then he's
Yep.
running back towards the cave with the gun smugglers running after him. I thought that was really cool. That was really well done. The direction, like I said before, the directing was really good for this episode. Um, yeah, I can't think of anything more great to say about it than
Yeah.
already is.
And leaving the doctor alone in the spaceship while we go check on other things. Like,
I know.
when is that ever a good idea?
Yeah, I know. I know.
Oh,
Classic.
what does all this stuff do?
That's right. Hey, it's our main computer. That's okay.
Yeah.
Classic noob mistake. But it was interesting how, like um, now of course I'm forgetting his name, but the gun runner, all he had to do was just leave the doctor.
Yeah.
And they would have been home free. They would have made it to their planet. They would have been
Yeah.
swimming in all the money that they had. But no, just for some reason, because he wants to take the doctor with him. And then all of a sudden, oh, you've got to stay in orbit until I figure out what to do, because the fact that the
Well,
doctor's there means the general, faked the execution and he lied to me. And now
yep.
I've got to kill the president, so.
And I loved that his assistant in the end took over. And
Yeah.
no. Yeah, that was like, at first I thought something had saved the president because he knew something. I mean, he knew. So I was like, did he know that he was going to do that? And so there was some kind of a safety net or something down there. And then when it was her, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And
Snap.
she's like, yep.
Crow Timon.
By the way.
Say hello to the new chairman of the board.
Yeah.
That was a really well done ending. Yeah, I don't think it's any surprise where we're going to stick this one, but I'll let you say it out loud.
S.
S.
Right. Yep.
Definitely. There you go, Ross. Up to S. Okay. I guess it's my turn. I will pick. Okay, you know what? Let's bite the bullet. I'll pick the Twin Dilemma. The first Colin Baker story right after the Caves of Androzani. Yeah. So when I covered this in the podcast, I tried to describe this as going from a 5 out of 5 down to a 1 out of 5 in one story. Like
in one story.
Yeah, it's like falling off a cliff,
Yep.
And yeah, oh man, like the Twin Dilemma, like it was just. It felt really weird. Like when you watch Caves, and maybe I guess almost anything before that. When you watch Twin Dilemma, it just feels like a really weird story. Like
yes.
Like what, how did they? I don't know. Like, there's a lot of question marks when you watch the Twin Dilemma. Like, it's like the dilemma is, how did this get made? That's one of the big dilemmas. And the worst part about it, is that the director behind this has made some of the most amazing Doctor Who stories in classic Who. So
that is a dilemma.
The director who made this, now I can't remember his name. The director who made this also did the 5 Doctors, which I mentioned earlier. So he did the 5 Doctors. He did a story called Modern Undead for Peter Davison, which is one of my favorite stories. About that. That's one that introduced Turlough. Okay. That was one of my favorite stories. And there's what did he do from Tom Baker? There was one that he did from Tom Baker, which was also really, really well done. And it's like, oh man, like, and he must have like gotten this script and thought, oh man, like someone shanked me, someone wants to tank my career at the BBC,
Well, whoever it was wanted to tank Colin Baker's career also, because that opening. So that was actually what did it when he choked her and was trying to kill her off. That was the end of him. Yeah, for the fan base.
That was it. That was awful. That was so hard to watch. And back when we were talking about Colin Baker from his trial episode, his regeneration story, yeah, like when he proudly boasted that he was going to have a longer run than Tom Baker, and the fact he was really proud of the fact that his character was going to develop over time, so that you would see that he was this gentle person, sort of wrapped in a harsh or harder shell,
right.
And over time we would get to see this gentler.
We just didn't have enough time.
and like, I don't know how much more time you needed, buddy. They took a long time to get there, and I think they were finally getting there for that Trial of a Time Lord series. Like the first story when him and Perry show up, where's
Perry? That's what kept. Hey, where's Perry?
It's right, but when they start showing them interacting, they have a really fantastic chemistry, and they have a really great relationship in that. Like, so they finally get there for that. But in the Twin Dilemma, oh boy, Like, I mean, she's ready to kill him, and I can totally understand why. But he's literally trying to kill her, and you're right. Like, as soon as he does that, like, I think half the fan base just turned the channel,
Yep.
and the ratings just started plummeting right after that. And I don't know. And then you've got like the giant slime slugs that kind of look weird, and then you've
Right.
got these bird-like people for no reason at all. Um,
That
and
are worshiping the slimes like they should be eating them,
it was, yeah, like, I mean,
or the slugs.
for a regeneration story. It kind of reminded me in a lot of ways. It kind of reminded me a lot of Sylvester McCoy's Time in the Rani, where the mistake the production team makes is that they choose a story that's totally alien. So it's hard to kind of be drawn there as a viewer. Like, you're trying, we've got a new doctor, and we're trying to find something to kind of like hook us and keep us,
Right.
pull us along the journey, and so what you don't want to do is surround this new doctor with a whole bunch of aliens that and then you've got this captain. Like, he's answering phones at this Earth Force secret base. He's answering the phone, and then he's leading the charge to go after these aliens who've kidnapped the twins, right? And then he decides to, he finds himself in the TARDIS, and he decides to go into the wardrobe, and for some reason he's
puts
got
on clothes.
Yeah, but I've got to find the shiniest, the most aluminum foil looking pants that I can possibly find. And I'm glad that I've always wanted to wear something like this, and I'm glad that I finally find some in this wardrobe in this mysterious ship that I've found myself on. And
And I just happened to find that when other people get lost in here.
That's right. And I look in the pocket of my shirt, and man, would you believe it's got the power pack for my gun? I mean, what are the odds?
Yeah, in all those clothes. I thought the same thing. That was like so hokey, because here he was, proud officer. I'm leading this charge, and well, I need to put on a disguise.
Yeah.
It did not make any sense.
No, it didn't. And they, and they don't even mention it in the rest of the story, like why he would have to change.
Oh, you change clothes.
Yeah.
Yep. I also thought, like, the guy appearing suddenly to the twins and saying, "Oh, I couldn't possibly hurt you. Now, what's your name? Here, let me touch your hand." And yeah.
Super geniuses, these are not.
Yes. But they are.
Yeah, it was, and for some reason he changes his name, but we never know why. He identifies himself as, Asmael. The doctor knows him as Asmael, but to the twins, he's Professor. No, not Professor.
He had those very similar. It was like Shashmail or something. It was very similar to what the doctor knew him as.
That's right.
And then he was also another mentor, or was he the same guy?
Well, and then there's Nestor, which is the giant slug.
Right. No, I was talking about that old man. When the doctor recognized him, he talked about him being a mentor of his.
Yeah.
And so then, what does that make him? Was he a Time Lord?
Yes.
It wasn't really obvious.
Yeah, he was a Time Lord. Time Lord.
And was he the same Time Lord that was the abbot and the other?
No, but like they did try to make the same string connections between the two.
Yeah.
Like when I was going through some of the behind the scenes for that, they did try to, at the last minute. Eric Sayward, when he was talking to the writer of this one, I can't remember the writer who did the writing of this one, but when he was describing to him what he wanted the story to be like, is that he was kind of remember how we introduced the Abbot and Kanpo and all that in Planet of the Spiders. And so I think he was trying to, get him to make something similar, but not actually be
the same,
another mentor or another thing. But he just kind of took it literally as another mentor, and, but I guess this mentor is the one that tells the doctor the best kind of alcohol to have. And I don't know.
And there was that whole scene where he stepped into the machine and then it did something to him and he looked like, I thought he was a android at that point. And so for a while in that episode, I was thinking, is he an android? Because when that machine came on, he looked like he was an android with some kind of something facade over him.
Totally. Yeah, no, you're right. And the only reason for that, the old gimmick for that, was just so that they could use that as a transporter when they had to escape in another convoluted type of scenario, right? And that whole, I don't know. If you've got a long list of Doctor Who to get through, I definitely would put this one at the very bottom.
Very bottom, absolutely.
Like,
in fact, under C. Yeah. So it was funny because we ranked these things outside of the show, and you put it as a 0.5 out of 5, and I put it as a 0.25 out of 5. So unfortunately, I told my fiance a long time ago that as much as I love Doctor Who, I couldn't recommend to anybody unless they just wanted to see the history of a lot of things within the show to go back and watch these older shows, because you have to really love the show in order to go back and watch a lot of them. But this is the first one of the old classic Doctor Who that she had ever seen. No. She was like, I've seen high school productions that are better than this. And that's where I got that statement earlier from, because she saw both of those. And she's like, this is really bad. So this is why I said, you have to really want to know and understand the history of some things in order to go back and watch these. I can't always recommend. I mean, there's a lot of really great ones to watch, but I can't always recommend watching them.
No, I agree. And this is kind of one of those ones that, I don't know. Like it doesn't impact the Doctor's character at all. Yep. Like it has. If you never watch this, then you don't miss anything in his whole Time Lord character personality.
That can almost be said for all of Colin Baker's episodes. So for all of you listening, like, don't watch this. Let us watch it for you. Yeah.
We took the bullet. We took one for the team.
You're welcome.
So I won't even ask. I'm gonna put this in the C. If we had a D, if we had a D, it would go there. But yeah, it's rough. Okay, next story.
Is it me?
I think it's you. Honestly, can't remember.
Yeah, it is. You said it's been doing the.
Oh yeah.
How about the Castrovalva? How do you say that?
Castrovalva?
That's the one. Castrovalva.
Castrovalva. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Castrovalva. Another Seinfeld reference. Vulva? Vulva. Who names their kid Vulva?
Kid Vulva.
No, this is Peter Davison's first story. I think they did, they did another. Unfortunately, they kind of went, how we were talking before about Tom Baker having less recovery time and kind of just getting into the story right away. I felt this one, they kind of went a little bit too much into the recovery type of scenario, but I guess they had to for the rest of the plot. Like, it was kind of integral to them going to Castrovalva was that he was still suffering from regeneration sickness or whatever. But I thought that it's not my favorite Davison story. I know that a lot of fans really like it, and I don't mind it. I think that interestingly enough, this isn't the first story of Davison's that they film. So they filmed For to Doomsday, which is another one in that same first season. They filmed that one first. So he was kind of in that, like, when you watch them in order, you'll kind of see a little bit of wait a minute, like he's kind of like taking a step, like he's not the same Doctor in some ways, because that's his very first story. So he's trying to figure out the ropes of him, of his own personality, like his own Doctor, like his own stamp on it, right? And then but the advantage of that is that Castrovalva, he appears really solid, because he's kind of in his head. In his head, he's kind of got it down now. Like, this is kind of who I want to be moving towards, and so they can move towards that in this one. Yeah, I mean, like it was unfortunate that, while they had the master in this is one where the master gets a little ridiculous. Um, and it was a little unfortunate that the camera angle that they have um, what's his face? Adric, who's hanging up in this metallic
Yeah,
web. Adric, and he, like the whole camera angle between the where he is in this web and where the master has to look to deliver his lines. It's a really unfortunate camera angle, but it's I don't know. Apart from that, I think they do an interesting job. They although you kind of never again hear about block computation mathematics
yep,
after
yep.
this. Like they're too powerful. They're too when you can rearrange like elements of the universe from these things, then it kind of becomes a too powerful type of nebulous thing to 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 talk about again, I guess. Like like what did you think?
So this is the one that introduced Tegan too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Oh no, Logopolis is where she first came in.
oh yeah, that's right, Logopolis. This one came after, but so it was kind of. I guess no, I'm not going to go into that. I'll go into that on Logopolis.
Okay.
All right. So
Okay.
yes. So it was interesting that guy was actually the master again.
The Poitreve.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, was it a disguise? Yeah.
He had like an old man. He was disguised
Yeah.
as an old man. And he was all
Yeah.
hunched over and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what this episode did for me is actually it opened up a lot that I didn't know about the I play Minecraft and I have a TARDIS in the Minecraft.
Okay.
And my TARDIS has like all of these different rooms. And so some of them came from this episode, like the Zero Room, for example.
Oh, okay.
And the console is the same console. And there's like a guide that's in the console where you can go and read how to use everything that apparently didn't exist. But all of that came from this episode.
Okay.
So for me, it was a lot of that history that I was talking about that you don't normally see from some of the other shows, but being able to get lost in the TARDIS and walking through multiple rooms and having to find and unravel the scarf in order to get to that was
right.
All very, very interesting. That scarf, by the way, so and we'll see that again in Tom Baker's. We already did Tom Baker's last episode, didn't we?
No, not yet. We did his first story,
yeah.
but not his,
we
not
did
his last story.
Okay, so that scarf, I don't remember ever seeing that scarf. That was a different scarf than his original scarf. I mean, even today, when you see people wearing a costume doing cosplay of Tom Baker, they have the typical scarf that he had at the beginning, but not that scarf, which is that crimson color. I really like that a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I do think that they overdid. Overdid a lot of the regeneration part and the whole scene with the ladies carrying him in the Zero chamber that they made from the Zero Room that they jettisoned.
Yep.
Could
have been dropped.
Yeah, could have been dropped.
Yeah.
It was, and then you have the knights from from what?
Castrovalva. Yeah, that was just weird.
So in my head, it was straight from Monty Python's Holy Grail. It was those knights.
That's right.
They look like them. They just needed to have the little thing on their face.
Yeah. and the little coconuts,
coconuts
galloping together. I know. I kind of had the same, and that again, that's kind of why I wasn't too big a fan of it. And it's another, you just triggered what I was going to say even about Logopolis is that one thing that Doctor Who tends to do a lot of is they use a name and you're not sure if it's the name of the planet or the name of the city that they're on, right? And they do this a lot. They kind of just drop a name, and then you kind of have to, use your own judgment to feel if that's the name of the city or the planet or what, and
Yeah.
maybe it doesn't really matter in a lot of stories. In this one, I guess it doesn't really matter that much, but it's kind of just one of those things that, well, are you talking about a city, planet, like what's going on there? So, yeah, no, and the it was an interesting idea trying to I was trying to think of the one after this. I guess the one after this doesn't matter, but it was a neat kind of wrap up. They tried to wrap up what happened in Logopolis. But it was really weird that, in order for Castrovalva to be created, the master would have to kind of assume that his plans were all going to fail from the Logopolis story.
Right.
Because this is kind of his plan B, and then you learn that, he created an entire information data system of the TARDIS just because, just for Tegan to find, right? And how sick is that? That's just
Yep.
That's demented.
And then Tegan's like, I flew the TARDIS.
That's right.
And it's the second time we see the TARDIS laying on its side, because when Matt Smith came out, it was on its side there too, and you wonder, how can that happen?
Yeah. No, you're right. Okay. So where would you put it?
Either C or B.
Okay. Seeing is what we have in C. I think I'll put it in B because it wasn't quite as bad.
I agree. I did like the concept also when they were drawing the map, and like, and where is this participant? Here, and here?
Yeah. You have 4 pharmacies? No, just the one, sir. Oh. Wait a minute. Cool. Okay. I will go with, let's go with William Hartnell's 10th Planet.
All right.
The introduction of the Cybermen. This is their first story. So
boy, was that rough.
Jerry Davis. Yeah, it was a little bit rough.
Talking about the Cybermen themselves. It's interesting to see how they have changed over the years.
For sure. Yep. I think that they haven't strayed too much from their initial concept of being a enhanced version of humans, which I think is great. Like it's a interesting concept, and they really try and do it justice in this. I will. There's a few scenes that really stand out for me. I think one of them is when they first enter our Arctic base, and Polly screams out. She screams out like, "Look out!" I can't remember the words she says, but it's really effective. Like she really screams, and you get like an instant kind of like your whole body kind of just like goes on edge because of that scream, right? And it's a really great effect. And the other one is the countdown of the rocket. I think it's episode 2 or 3, one of them. But it was really well done. Like it gets to 1, and then we get the cliffhanger.
Right.
Like of course.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I mean, what's gonna happen. But at the same time, like you're like really fixed to the screen watching this. And
yep.
What did you think?
Well, so as I was listening to your dramatization of it. And you were talking about Polly going and getting them coffee. I felt like you were saying, "Oh, come on, Polly, you should be doing better than that." I felt like she was using it as a ruse to stay behind and try to convince them of what they should be doing instead of what they were doing.
That's a better way of looking at it. That's a much better way. Yeah, because when you first watch it, what can I do? Well, darling, why don't you get us some coffee? There's a good girl, right? And you're like, yuck. Yeah, you're right. That's a good way of looking at it. Okay. And what did you know? Of course, William Hartnell had a stroke, some kind of health issue. I think it was a heart attack or stroke. And so he was out completely.
He was out most of it, and he was out in the episode.
Yeah, he was out like for episode 3. So they kind of just they have a body double of him in the lower bunk, and Ben
Yep.
and Polly are trying to talk to him, and of course you only see his back. And
Yeah,
but I think they carried the story really well.
they did. They were
The
very strong, both of them, I thought.
Definitely, they're really good. They were really well written characters. That brings up the one part of the story that never made sense, and maybe you know where I'm starting to go with this, is that right at the end, when the Doctor knows he's about to regenerate, he leaves Ben and Polly in the cyber ship for some
Yep.
reason. They don't really explain it well. They for some reason they decide to stay behind, and he wants to leave.
Yeah, I've got to
And
get back to the ship. We'll stay here.
yeah,
What?
yeah. Like,
We'll be right
and
there.
that's right. And so the Doctor heads back to the TARDIS, and he's already starting to regenerate, and he's collapsed, or basically on the point of being unconscious. But somehow Ben and Polly are able to get into the TARDIS, and they've tried to explain a few times. They've tried to not showcase. They've tried to describe the TARDIS as being an entity itself,
Yep.
where it's got a mental connection with the Doctor. It's got this special connection with the Doctor, and so all I can think of is that the TARDIS itself decided to open the doors to let Ben and Polly come back in, but
So
they
it's interesting that you say that because I don't remember what version you watched, but the version that I watched had a lot of stills, and it wasn't the animated one. I think you had an animated one.
yeah, I watched the animated version. Yeah,
So mine was comprised of stills, and every once in a while there were video clips of like 5 or 6 seconds long, and then every once in a while some of the cartoon was brought in, the animated. And so there was a lot of subtitle at the bottom of it as they were talking. And like sometimes you just have the still and you hear the audio going on and then the subtitle tells you something.
okay,
And so on that scene, it said the Doctor musters all of his strength to hit a lever to open the door to allow them in.
okay,
At which point the door opened and they came in.
and they came in.
So,
Okay,
but I couldn't see any action at that point because it was just a still.
right.
But so that may be I don't know who put the subtitles on it and the description of those things, but
Right.
yeah.
But yeah, so it's almost it comes down to basically maybe your own interpretation of what you want to happen.
I think we're gonna have to because we don't know what was actually filmed.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, no, and I felt that the one thing I'm really glad they changed was the way the Cybermen talked.
Yeah,
I don't know why. I'm sure when they envisioned this character, they wanted to and like really take it over the top with, that they would speak like robots, and robots would talk like this,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so it was an interesting idea, but I'm glad they changed it in future Cybermen stories, and I'm also glad that they didn't end up giving a lot of dialogue to the Cybermen here. They kept it on the short side.
yeah.
So,
Thought it was interesting also that they're superior to humans, but extremely susceptible to any kind of radiation.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean that whole again, it's kind of one of those ones similar to the war games. It was really not very explained very well, and maybe they didn't have an answer, which is why they didn't explain it. But why would the presence of Mondas increase radiation, and like why would things go? Why would the approaching planet
Yeah,
cause this? I can't remember the exact.
they sucked energy from the planet.
That's right.
somehow.
That's right. They were like slurping away energy
Mhm.
from the earth, and
And
why
then it
would that
became
happen?
too much and it exploded. What?
That's right. And yeah, like when you start to think about it, it kind of didn't make too much sense, but it was a good vehicle, I feel, for the Cybermen to be introduced. And so where would you put it? Where would you?
I actually liked it a lot, even though I had to piece most of it together in my head. So I'm kind of struggling on this one between A and B.
I'll give it an A.
Okay.
I think it was, like you say, I think it was well done. We complain about it, but at the same time, it was their first regeneration story.
Yep.
And they were really unsure what was going to happen once they brought in a new actor.
And it was fantastic how they like came up with the idea for the regeneration and how this is how we're going to keep the show going.
It was like, I mean, life-changing is an understatement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the show is now like almost 40, 50 years running because of this one concept. So imagine, and it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier about small things resulting in larger things down the road. Like imagine just coming up with this, how are we going to explain this? Oh, we'll just call it, the Doctor's reborn, regenerating.
Yep.
Like a one-word throwaway, and then 50 years later, it's like one of the core concepts of the show, right? So.
And how many he has.
That's right.
And can he give them away to somebody else?
Don't go there.
Can somebody give some to him?
Yeah. They're like trading cards.
Yeah.
I'll give you my 8th if you'll give me my 12th. Okay. Oh, I think it's. Is it my turn?
No, it's my turn.
Okay.
Logopolis, I think, since we've already kind of mentioned it a little bit.
Okay. Logopolis. Tom Baker's last story, where we introduce Tegan. We see her for the first time. We introduce this whole idea of a cloister bell in like an emergency type of persona, I guess, of the TARDIS, where it's warning the Doctor of impending doom. We get the Watcher, who's the future version, who becomes Peter Davison at the end of Logopolis when the Doctor falls from the radio telescope. I don't know if you heard, it's very hard to spot on the TV or on the episode when you're watching it unless you know to look for it. And I don't know why I'm jumping to it right away. This is kind of getting in the weeds really quickly. But like on episode 4, right near the end, there's a shot where the Master is looking out from the control room as the Doctor is on the radio telescope arm, and there's a shot looking dead on at the Master, and it's actually a cardboard cutout of the Master. Because for some reason they needed to do this filler shot. It's only like 2 seconds long, so like you didn't even need it for one thing, and for another thing, maybe they couldn't get Anthony Ainley for that one. So for whatever reason, they had to get a paper cutout of him, and when you watch it and when you know to look for it now, you can kind of pick it out, especially in HD. Right.
It stands out in my head now that you've said it, because I remember that, because I was like, he's not moving. He's just sitting there.
That's right. He's just got to. And that's exactly why it stands out, because he's totally frozen. They've taken a screenshot and they've kind of photoshopped it in there. Right. And
before Photoshop.
That's right. And the other interesting / weird thing was the fact of they have a Time Lord in a like a dressed up as an Englishman kind of materialize out of thin air right in that last episode too, to talk to the Doctor. And there's no TARDIS. He can kind of just materialize as a Time Lord, right? And that kind of threw a lot of questions around how does time travel work when you can just project yourself wherever across the universe from Gallifrey.
And was it a projection, or was it really him?
Yeah,
I mean, they did that with Adric, right? Adric was able to do it through his.
That's right.
Mathematics.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
I don't know, but it's interesting that you say that, because going back to the Zero Room when they were carrying him, he had this ability to also like make himself lighter. Remember? Yeah. And then in another episode, he touches somebody's forehead and they like, Vulcan, whatever.
The Vulcan neck pinch.
Neck pinch thing, right?
Yeah. No, so, I know.
Yeah. So there's but then it also made me wonder, like in the more recent ones, you have like the Face of Bo guy who had the band that he would wear that he could time travel with, just by itself. So there's um, other things like that are going on with the Doctor with these other kind of psychic things. Now he's got the psychic paper, but like where are all these other powers at? Did they only happen for one or
Right. They introduce them, as a MacGuffin for one episode, and then that's it.
Right. Yep.
It's never
Yep.
brought up again. So, I also thought it was kind of funny how they were really careful. The guards were really careful to. I guess it's more back to Castrovalva, but the beginning of Castrovalva, the guards are really careful when they're searching Tegan and Nyssa when they've got them up against the side of the van. I mean, they're kind of just okay, you're okay, right? Like they don't even pat them down, like they just okay, you're all good. And then with Adric, they're pawing over the whole guy, right? Like,
Yep. Yep.
Okay, putting on the rubber glove. Okay, Adric, bend over now, right? And it's kind of like, what's going on here, but yeah, no, Logopolis. I think they did a really good. It was another one of these. Is it the name of the planet, the name of the city? But I guess it doesn't matter.
Right.
But it was a neat concept that they had a. I was kind of at first interested, but then a little bit disappointed in some ways. I don't know why disappointed, but this radio telescope that they talk about on Earth that they cloned on Logopolis, this Project Pharos. It sounded like a real place on Earth, like something real that we would have, like some
Right.
telescope looking up in space, searching for, like the SETI project, right? Later on,
Right.
and so I was, during the research for this story, I was convinced that it was a real telescope.
Yeah.
And they filmed it there, and but it was just made up for these two stories. So
We also have the introduction of being able to put the TARDIS within a TARDIS.
yes, yeah,
And I was trying to figure out why he wanted to get the dimensions of it so right. And then they landed on top of the TARDIS, and then inside them was the TARDIS, or not the TARDIS, but it was supposed to have been the police box that was
Right.
outside.
Right.
Which when do you ever see that happening on any of the episodes? But of course, I guess they never really landed on top of something else. But you have that, and then they go inside of it, and it's another TARDIS. So it's like the picture in picture in picture that you have sometimes with your camera.
That's
on your
right.
computer. But so all of that was interesting. Then they step outside of they go through the outside door instead of going in deeper, and they're immediately outside in the outside world.
Yeah, yeah. No,
and then you go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, like in Castrovalva, they were building on. There's a famous painting. I can't remember the name of it now, but there's a famous painting where it's of an optical illusion of those staircases. It's like a diamond of staircases, but they're going in different.
From Escher.
That's it, from Escher, right? And so in that was kind of the nugget that put Castrovalva together in the writer's head.
Yeah.
And so in Logopolis, it almost felt like the same kind of thing where they were building on like a Russian doll type of situation, And, but you're right. That's where it falls apart, is that they get to the very bottom doll of this Russian doll, and then they open the door, and all of a sudden they're outside again, and instead of needing to go all the way back out through the loop, right? And yeah, I think they never tackled it again because it was probably really confusing to edit together.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, it was really confusing just in general. How do you put a TARDIS inside of another TARDIS? And it kind of goes in the face, like a lot of these things did with people coming into the TARDIS. When you get into more recent episodes where they say nothing can get through that door. Well, gosh, everybody got through the door in the past episodes.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, cops came in here, some old lady walking by, she manages to get in,
Yep.
And yeah, and speaking of characters, the one thing that was a little bit of a shame is this is kind of the first introduction of the it will become the first introduction of the Tegan, Nyssa, Adric sort of companion trio that Peter Davison travels around with.
Mm-hmm.
That I think he becomes most famous for. Like when you think of Peter Davison, I think when you think of his Doctor, I think you think of Tegan, Nyssa, and Adric.
Yeah, yeah,
all traveling together. And the one fatal flaw of a lot of their stories is that they just don't have enough for each of them to do. There's
yep,
just too many companions, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so how do you write for that many? And so this one is kind of the starting of that. Like it's really too bad because in the beginning of Logopolis, we get Adric and the Doctor together, just the two of them, and they
yep,
actually have a really good relationship. Adric isn't annoying. Like he's actually a really interesting character with the Doctor. They gel really well together,
yep,
at least in this one, right? And
yep.
then it's almost as if the writers are like, no, we got to get someone else in there right away, and so
Yeah,
they introduce Tegan, and Tegan has like her whole personality is so overpowering that she just like fills the room.
yep, yep.
She comes which to her credit, I mean, that's how she's written and that's how she's played by Janet Fielding, and like as soon as she's introduced, she's like taking off, and like
Yeah.
she's really like taking up.
So something interesting about her that they played up in the very beginning when we were introduced to her, but they never revisited in that episode was how forgetful she was.
Yeah,
I thought that was like I was waiting to figure out why she was so forgetful, and then all of a sudden she wasn't
yeah,
about anything.
yeah, a little bit of yeah.
Continuity problem, yeah.
That's right. That's what I was trying to say. Right. And yeah, and like there was a lot of things where it would have made more sense for Nissa to do than Tegan,
Yep,
like for them to switch. But
yep,
then it didn't work later on in the same scene if they had have switched, right?
yeah,
So it's kind of like they got themselves stuck in some instances where, okay, we've got to have Tegan here, but in order to build her up there, we've got to introduce her doing this back here, and then
yep, yep. And then you get to the end when the planet's going to blow up or whatever, and she decides to stay on the planet that's going to blow up because her only way home is not the TARDIS, it's the Doctor.
right,
So
right. Yeah.
didn't make a lot of sense. But at the same time, we haven't talked about the master's role in any of this episode, which was he was the puppet master behind everything. He was
Yep.
interfering with everything, blowing up the universe. Didn't realize what he was doing, and then when he did realize what he was doing, he decides to hold the entire universe, for ransom.
Of course, as the master does.
Yes.
Yep.
And then you have the Watcher, who was watching, and like he told the Doctor something that didn't really matter because he died anyway in
Yep.
the end, right?
Yep.
And he told Adric, "Well, go to Earth." Like that was his only function, as far as you can tell, is that he was telling Adric where he needed to go with the TARDIS next.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
MacGuffin. But I mean, we saw it again, like we said in that other episode with the spiders and the mentor, where he had his next regeneration wandering around, and then we see it again in modern time when Matt Smith is locked inside the I forget what it's called, that cube, and then
Oh, right. Yeah.
so he does it to himself too, coming from the future to talk to himself and give himself advice in order to make it out.
Yeah.
Without
Yeah.
which that advice he would never be able to get out. So
But they executed that one brilliantly.
yeah.
They got themselves out of that. Like I thought, how are they going to get them out? How are the
Yep.
writers going to get themselves out of this one? And they managed to do it. Yeah. No,
Yep.
you're right. You're right. That's yeah. They kind of had an inkling of that, and yeah. Like I kind of wish that they developed the Watcher as like you only kind of know about it after you've seen the whole thing.
Yep.
But I wish they had kind of, maybe introduced him a little bit differently, where he's not just a creepy stalker watching Tegan and the Doctor and whatever for a while. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of a like he's involved. He's moving events in order to make sure they're going in the right direction, like something
Yep.
like that, right? Like where he's actively doing something instead of just watching.
And then at the end, you're wondering why. Like, what did he
Yeah,
change?
yeah. What was the purpose?
Yeah.
And I still don't really know.
Yeah.
Um, so
So last thing on this. So this episode made me start to think when I'm playing Minecraft. I told you I have a TARDIS,
yeah,
and my Minecraft handle is the Doctor, and I go around places, and much like the Master, I will cause my TARDIS to land on stuff. So I have like there's a whole bunch of different things that you can make the TARDIS look like, and so I made all of those things in the Minecraft server, and then I materialize over top of them while disguised as those things, so you can't tell that that's my TARDIS. And I mess around with my daughters and their friends when they're playing, and I'll scoop them up and I'll trap them in the TARDIS and I'll take them off to other places, drop them off, dematerialize, leaving them behind, and I do all these things. And so then I'm watching this episode and I'm like, huh, I'm doing all the things the Master does.
all you need is a recording that plays "People of Earth." This
Yes.
is the Master. That's
All
really
right.
cool.
So where would you put this?
I guess I would put this. I would match this with Castrovalva. I would put this on the B level.
Yep.
It
Yep.
was pretty good. It not the. It was a good. It was a good final send off for Tom Baker. But at the same time, I felt like it could have been something more, a little more.
Yeah.
Okay, we're making our way. 3 left.
Yes.
Holy smokes! And we're coming up to almost 2 hours.
Wow.
This is gonna be.
Sorry, everybody.
No. This is. I'm having a great time. I'm having.
Yeah, I am too.
A really fun time putting this together. So hopefully everyone sticks around to the end here. But I'm sure they will. Okay, and I will go next, and I
All
will.
10 of us.
Yeah.
I'm one of those 10.
Yeah, and my mom.
Yeah.
Who has no idea what's going on, but just. My son has a podcast.
Better cut that part out.
That's right. Okay, I'll pick Time in the Rani.
Time of the Rani. All right.
So Sylvester McCoy's first introduction to the Doctor, they, as I was saying in the episode for it during my summary, they really had not very many choices to go from for stories, so they just took a Colin Baker idea and they kind of stuck Sylvester McCoy into it, and you can kind of get that when you're watching the story. As for myself, I never really liked the concept of the Rani. I love the actress who plays her. She does an amazing job with what she's given, the material she's given. But the whole concept of the Rani, I think, is just a laboratory Time Lord, like a very clinical Time Lord. Like, it's not much of a character. Like, it's a I don't know. There's so many things that they could have come up with as a third type of Time Lord to the Master and the Doctor, and it feels like that this one just never did it for me.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I didn't really understand what she was trying to accomplish other than ruin the universe.
Yeah. Yep. Creating her own. The ultimate goal was to create her own time sort of time machine, time meddler, time manipulator. That's it.
Manipulator. Yeah.
Like a time manipulator, but again, like, okay, so you can influence events throughout the universe, but
then what?
Then what? Right? Like, to what ultimate goal? Right? And
Yep.
it was a little bit. And there was another story during Colin Baker's years. There was a story there called Time in the Rani, not Time in the Rani, something in the Rani. Now I'm drawing a blank, but it was where it was kind of the same idea. It took place on Earth during the Industrial Revolution time period, and she was bringing in all of the sort of big names at the time to work for her, right? So it was almost kind of the same.
The same, yeah.
Yeah, the same kind of concept, and it was also written by the same people who wrote Time in the Rani, right? So
hey, let's do it again.
It worked so well the first time, you know.
So one thing I liked, the creatures that had the eyeballs all the way around, like that was a really nice looking costume. Aside from the rag whatever bat stuff
Yep,
behind the head mask was really well done, I thought.
I agree. I agree.
Although the eyeballs were very wobbly, like they were clearly those little jiggly eyes or whatever, but it was an interesting concept, a creature that can see in every direction,
I
has
totally
some
agree.
form of intelligence. And
It was kind of neat how they tried to like overlay overlay what it would look like through their eyes. Like
yeah,
so the video was
yep,
overlaying sort of like all four directions while like at the same time simultaneously, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
which would, I mean, it drove me nuts when I was watching it. So but I guess if that's all the vision you have,
yeah.
then you adapt to those conditions, I guess. I don't know.
And I forget, how did she get him to have amnesia?
Um, she injected him with something.
That's right.
It was like she had Bayus, that other alien guy, inject him with it was like a blue. Well, it doesn't matter
Yeah,
what
yeah.
the color it was, but it was some kind of injection thing that.
And then it was curious that she knew exactly what his companion looked like and had the same outfit and wig already set up,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
to be able to convince him that she was her. And which was really funny because my daughter walked through while I was watching this, and she came in after she already had the costume on, and then she saw the other one running around in the rocks, and she said, "Wait a minute, is there a fake one of those?" But she had just kind of come through a couple times and was watching in passing.
Right,
So
right. Yeah, no, that was, and like the Kate, can't remember, I don't want to say Kate Jackson. That's
yeah, it's
totally
not
other
Kate
different,
Jackson.
totally different show. But Kate something did is the name of the Rani, and she did a really great job of trying to emulate Mel's voice, which is very hard because Mel has this really high
Yeah,
pitched, voice, and
it doesn't look like her voice at all.
yeah. So yeah, again, I think the main problem, apart from being a Colin Baker story with Sylvester McCoy thrown into it, they totally, nobody knew what to turn Sylvester McCoy into, which I think
Yeah,
didn't help for this because he kind of didn't get any idea of what direction to try and start taking the character into, but also just the fact that we're on a totally alien world with alien people and like everything is alien, and
yep, yep,
so there's nothing to kind of bring us into Sylvester McCoy's first story, apart from maybe Mel. But even Mel, we have no idea. Like in Trial of a Time Lord, you don't she's just
yep.
there.
She's
Like
just there.
she just shows up. Like there's no origin with Mel. There's no origin story. She just shows up during that Trial of a Time Lord with Colin Baker series,
And there
and
to help him triumph.
yep,
What?
fill him up with carrot juice and
Yeah.
get him on a treadmill, right?
We meant
So
we meant to tell her story, but we just didn't get around to
yeah,
it. I also thought it was interesting. He picked up the umbrella and he kept making use of that multicolor umbrella. And then, later he had the iconic black umbrella with the question mark on it.
right, right, right. Oh yeah, no, that's a good one. That's a good
Yeah.
one.
So I don't have a lot more to say about this one.
Me neither.
It was kind of overall a weak story to me.
Yep, I agree.
I had some interesting things, but like him constantly asking what's behind the door got really old.
It did, yeah, it did, and yeah, it was his constant. You know, if he was so curious, then he would have gone ahead and just
Yeah.
opened it. And yeah, you're right. It kind of got old pretty quick.
Now here's an interesting thing. He stated his age in this episode, and it was older than what Matt Smith claimed to be.
Okay, so his age in this was what, 993?
900 and yeah. No, it was more than that, wasn't it?
Because it was the password on the door. It was the same as
Yeah,
his age, and it was something like 993 or
right.
99.
And
It was
Matt
a
Smith
three
is,
digit. It was a three-digit thing. So what did Matt Smith say?
I forget what his was, but it was like 914 or 15 or something.
Oh,
It was
okay,
much lower.
okay. So they didn't even count like
Yeah.
Christopher Ecclestian and Dave
Yep.
Tennant and okay.
Yep. So
Oh, 953, 953. That's what it
953.
was.
That's what it was. That's exactly what it was. So
Okay.
yeah. So I was like, another continuity problem. But I mean, people will say, well, yes, but then you have to think how many years did any of them, like all of them, lived for a long time, because
Yeah.
there were lots of things that happened to them in between things. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
whoever wrote Matt Smith's age didn't watch any of the previous ones.
Well, just like Matt Smith.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry, Matt, if you listen to this.
Yep. We love you. We love you.
Yeah, Eric loves you.
Totally.
I'm kidding. I ended up liking him enough, but
Initially, yeah.
initially I was like,
So where would you stick Time in the Rani?
uh, C or B.
Yeah, for me it's a C.
Yeah.
When you see what we have in B,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would stick it in C.
Yep.
Okay, two left.
Is it me?
It's you.
Um, let's see. We have Airhead. What?
Oh, Spearhead from space
Spearhead from space.
and Airhead, Radiohead. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And Power of the Daleks.
Oh, let's do Power of the Daleks.
Okay, good. I love that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Patrick Troughton's first story. Again, they were really smart. They ended off the 10th planet with the Cybermen, and they took the number one enemy that the Doctor has, that the show is known for, the Daleks, and they brought them back in order to keep us watching Patrick Troughton long enough to get hooked on him.
Right.
And I think they did a really really good job of
Really
that.
well job.
Yep. A really good job of that. They had a strong characters to go from right away. That
Yep.
the Doctor figured out pretty quickly. Again, there wasn't too much regeneration sickness that I can remember. Right away he's kind of maybe while they're digging through all the props that he has, maybe that's about it.
Yeah.
But they
Yeah.
they resolve that pretty quickly to get to the story.
Yep. And then they immediately set up mystery. Like right. They get out onto the planet. They don't know where they are. He's just gone out and not checked anything.
Right.
And immediately somebody's calling to him. That person gets shot. He
Yep.
gets hit over the head, and something gets stuck in his hand.
Yep.
And then all these people show up suddenly, and you're like, "Where'd all these people come from?"
That's right. Who's that? What's that? What's that? What's over here?
Yeah. How did nobody hear a gunshot?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it is really funny you mention that because one thing that they tended to do with William Hartnell's Doctor is he would really like analyze the planets that they would land on
Yep.
first. He would check their oxygen level, their nitrogen and hydrogens, and like gravity, and like he would go through the list before
Yep.
they even open the door. And in this one they just kind of swing open the door and let's go everyone.
And then didn't the radiation level like show that it was really high up at the beginning of it too?
That's right. Yeah.
But then that didn't even play into anything at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh well.
Yep.
But yeah, no, it was really well done. I did like it a lot. It was a good. It was a really good Dalek mystery story. Because the great thing I think that the Daleks have that gives them a lot of the power in their stories is that you don't know if they're alive or not
Yeah.
when they're inside their casing, right? Like they,
Yep.
of course, their eyes flicker when they talk in,
Yep.
in most normal circumstances, but a lot of the times they could just pretend like they did in this story. They can just pretend that they're
Dormant.
dormant, right? That they're dead or whatever, and everyone talks around them just thinking that they're subservient type of machines. And speaking of that, I mean, I really howled at the part where the doctor or the Dalek comes in with a glass of lemonade for the
Yes.
the station, for the security chief.
Would you like some liquid? Are you through with your liquid?
So good.
Like, who talks like that? Oh, dialect does, definitely.
That was really well done.
Yeah.
I laughed so hard at that, and just that whole conversation, was it was like, they had a fourth wall moment of what the doctor or what the Daleks are like, and like they were brainstorming that morning, in planning or something, and they
Yeah.
came up with this scene like we need to fill 30 seconds, and how about we
Let's
do
have
this?
them just repeating the same thing over and over again. So it was interesting that you say that, because every time they would do that and the dialects would all get together and start repeating this thing over and over
Oh,
again, it reminded me, because we've seen that in recent times
yep.
with when the Daleks were talking, and Clara, when she reprogrammed them so they wouldn't know who the Doctor was,
Right.
and then they were like, Doctor Who, Doctor Who. And they did exactly the same thing, and they repeated it over and over again. He got onto the TARDIS, he came back out, and was like, you're never going to stop saying that. And then got back on the TARDIS. I'm like, oh, that was total homage back to early classic Doctor Who Daleks. So,
Right.
but you didn't know it at the time. Actually, going through all of these, there were so many things that were classic Dalek, or not Dalek, but just classic things that are paid in homage from the current series. It's really interesting to see.
Totally. And yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because the one thing that drove me nuts, and we tend to get off on so many tangents here, but I think that's part of the cool discussion that this is that when they first brought back the Doctor, after that 19-year hiatus. I love it how they call it a hiatus. They first bring him back, and they totally, in that first season, they've totally disconnected him from all of classic Doctor Who. Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
really write him in such a way that this is the first time we're seeing the Doctor, that he doesn't have any of this history. The only history he has is the TARDIS and that he's a Time Lord. But
Yeah.
even then, they all of a sudden he's the last Time Lord. He's the only Time Lord, right? Like that kind of thing, and they really do a job of. And I don't know if that was the condition of getting the series greenlit. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I have no idea of the story behind
And
that.
yet, in that particular episode, the very first one, they paid homage to the classic Who by putting in the mannequins, which are in the next one, the Spearhead.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. The Autons. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
And
Yeah,
I mean, those are exact duplicates down to the hand folding in half and becoming a gun
totally.
from that episode. So, all right.
Okay, so let's rate this one. Power of the Daleks.
I like that one a lot. So I would either put that in the S or A. I did, see the same kinds of problems that you saw with it, in terms of like that ship did not look that big, and they didn't talk about it. In more recent times, they have a ship where they called it turned out to be a prison that the Daleks were in, and they said that it had Time Lord technology in it, and it was because it was the size of a Dalek, and it was full of them, because it was actually a prison.
Okay.
But they didn't talk about that at all with this one, so it was interesting. That was a huge factory inside.
Yeah, that they conveniently never mention or bring up. Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so
I would rate it either S or A. I think leaning more towards A.
okay, I would lean towards more S, but I will take your A. Power of the Daleks. And the only other funny thing about that was just his hat. I don't know if you saw the.
Oh yeah, that big tall.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
what that was. I don't know if like he's a lephecon or a.
Thankfully he didn't keep it, but I mean, It kind of reminded me of the episode that I was talking about when Matt Smith came back and helped himself get out of the box, Pandora's box or whatever it was.
Oh yeah, and he had the fez.
And he's like, "Look, I wear a fez now.
Yeah, that's right.
Fezzes are cool. Bow ties are cool."
Bow ties are cool. Love the shirt.
Thanks.
Okay. So last but certainly not least, Robert Holmes, Spearhead from Space.
Yep.
John Pertwee's first story, and it's also the first story in color. We get Unit. We get the
Yes.
Doctor. We get
We get a stuck doctor.
we get a stuck Doctor. We get you're right. He's been not ostracized. He's been banished to Earth, and whatever that word is that I can't think of right now. And the
Stranded.
stranded or exiled.
Yeah.
That's it. Exiled. He's exiled to Earth after the War Games, and he lands during a meteor shower where all these modules are falling to Earth that all contain part of the Nestine intelligence, which is another really cool concept that the show came up with. They do come back throughout John Pertwee's era, and it's interesting that they would pick the Nestine during the relaunch of Doctor Who. That's certainly not one that would spring, even though I enjoyed them, it's not one that would kind of spring to my mind when you're talking about a reboot. Like, let's reboot Doctor Who. Oh, okay, let's bring back the Nestine. Oh, okay. Sure. So, but it worked. This one really worked. It took advantage. I think it was a really good showcase of John Pertwee's whole personality. Even though he was stuck a lot in the first episode in the hospital, he ended up, when he finally did get up and moving, he was his very comedic self. And they did a really good job of showcasing John Pertwee.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I liked the episode a lot. Thought it was interesting, the complete difference between him and the previous Doctor. Just it was a huge difference.
Yep.
And didn't they have him starting out wearing Hartnell's clothes? Even in the very beginning of it, like sometimes the Doctor will regenerate and he'll have a different set of clothes on. And in this case, he had on this oversized clothes for a while. Maybe I'm wrong.
He did steal someone's clothes from the hospital.
Yeah.
If that's what you're thinking of, where he had a cape, he had I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of like an opera.
Yeah. No, I was thinking of a different episode. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not it.
But yeah, that's not really consistent either when you bring up
Yeah.
the regeneration and the clothes. In some stories, he's, like in Time of the Rani, he's still wearing Colin Baker's outfit.
Yep.
But in other stories, when he regenerates, he's suddenly wearing totally different clothes.
Yep.
So and I mean, I love the idea of bringing in Liz as his companion, who's also hyper intelligent, which was to her detriment later on. That's why they canceled her pretty quickly. Was because the audience just couldn't connect with her because she was so smart. Which I'm not making any comments about what that says as their expectations of the audience.
Right.
But they felt that she was just too smart of a character, and so nobody could really connect with her. But I thought they played her really well. I thought they wrote her very well, and you didn't have to be a scientist to see her point of view, and understand where she's coming from. So I couldn't understand their argument of needing to write her out. But whatever, that's not here or there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a lot on this one either. I did enjoy it a lot. So rating wise, I would put it up. I think probably in S.
I agree.
No,
I agree. I think it was a really strong story. It was just good Doctor Who. The whole scene with the Auton trying to find the crystal at that hunter's hut. I thought was really well done. They shot that one really well, and it was a lot of tension and a lot of drama, and
Yep.
again, being a kids show, they didn't kill off the wife, the hunter's wife. They only knocked her out. But at first, I thought she was dead, and then a few
Yeah.
seconds later, no, the Auton just kind of knocked her out. But then later on, that whole that just one more thing about it, that whole scene where they start crashing through the shop windows
Yeah. Yeah.
in early morning London, right? Like I think that was a pretty iconic scene that they managed to put together, and I'm sure they I don't know how long it took to film that, but it I think it was really well done. Like they did a tremendous job of putting that together, and
Absolutely. And then that's the one I was talking about. They paid homage to in the new series. So
yeah,
Christopher Ecclesias's character had the same exact experience with
right,
with the mannequins busting out of the windows and coming out and attacking everybody in London.
right.
So,
And I wonder if before that before they were thinking of doing the reboot, I wonder if was it Russell T Davies? Did he also do it the first time again? Um,
I don't know.
whoever it was who brought it might have been Russell T. I mean, I should know, but I can't recall the name off the top of my head. But I wonder if they did a poll of what they remember the most from Classic Who, and I wonder if one of the top answers from that poll was the Nestine, which is why they went with it in the first
Yeah,
episode.
that's a good question. I don't know.
So
I'll have to
yeah,
look it up.
yeah. But here we are, where we got the end. We got our 14 episodes, 14 stories ranked on our tier
Wow.
list. I'll take a screenshot and I'll put this in the show notes for the podcast. But you can also watch this on YouTube if you want to just, this is kind of a really great episode to just leave running and listen to while you're doing other things. You can hear us, babble along, and we've got our rankings, and I had a tremendous time today, Colin.
Yeah, me too.
I really want to thank you for coming on the show. I've talked about this podcast forever to you, and it was one of those, we should do this, we should do that. Yeah, that sounds good, that sounds good. And then finally, it kind of gelled together for this recap idea of a story.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me for this.
No, you're totally welcome. You're totally welcome. And this officially brings the end to season 1 of my podcast, and
Woo!
I'm excited, but
You
I
did it.
also I also don't know what I'm gonna do for season 2. I there's a lot of ideas that I had. Maybe what I'll mention right now is I was going to talk about this kind of afterwards, but just to briefly drop this now, because I'm sure everyone is sticking around for this whole 3-hour marathon episode. But one of the challenges that I came across in this podcast, one of the successes I learned from it was what it takes to put this podcast together and put something together for this. And I can only imagine, helping, me going through this kind of really made me develop a lot of empathy for the writers at the time putting the show together, because they're sitting down at the, January or February, trying to plan something that would air September, October, and they would so the first few months were all about planning these episodes, these stories, trying to come up with lining up locations, lining up, the actors that they would need, like there's a lot that goes into these productions. Like we rank them pretty, casually on this tier ranking list, but even Twin Dilemma, even Time in the Rani took a ton of effort to just put those together, and so putting this podcast together really helped me develop empathy for how something this creative gets put together. But I did want to say that one of the challenges is what I started at, is that it took me a long time to put each story together. Making notes for every story took me hours and hours to go through. I think it took me 2 or 3 weeks to put together my notes for the war games, because it was, I sat down and, oh my goodness, 12 episodes that I'm going to have to go through. and like going into season 2 of this podcast, I don't know if I'm going to do it the same way, like, because I don't have enough data to know if the format of the show is okay, or if the format of the show is what's not working with it. Like, I don't know what's connecting with people when they download this, when they want to listen to it. So I don't know if they want
Or
to
what's
hear,
not connecting with people. So
or
yeah.
what's not right. Like, I mean, are they like, is the backstory interesting to anyone other than me and you? Like the behind the scenes stuff. Like, is that of interest to anybody? Or is my long, recaps of each episode of each story not done in the most interesting way, right? Like, is it, so there's a few things I want to try and play with during my planning of season 2. I do want to do a season 2. I'm not sure what kind of theme I want to go with yet, but I do want to get back to it, because I had a really great time putting this show together. And yeah,
Well, maybe people can email you in and make
yeah,
some suggestions.
Hey, it's funny you mentioned that, Colin. How would they do that? They would do that by writing to mailbag@summonsfromgallifrey.com, or you can hit me up on Twitter at euzwa, EYUZWA. And any ideas that you might have or feedback for the show would be greatly appreciated. And I'll read and go through everything and see how I can use that for planning of season 2.
Excellent.
Awesome. But I had a really great time today. Thank you
So did
again,
I.
Colin, for coming on.
Thank you.
Awesome. It was a lot of fun. I hope we can do it more in the future.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Anytime.
we'll take it from there. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks.
Peace.